Hello and welcome back to the Naked Marriage Podcast. We are Dave and Ashley Willis, and on this podcast, we undress the truth about sex, intimacy, and lifelong love. And we have an awesome episode for you today, another great piece of marriage advice, and we're really excited to talk about it. But we hope that you stay till the very end because we have an awesome Q&A today, specifically about miscarriage and how to handle that in your marriage.
Yeah, it's so true. And just as kind of like a little side note on that, whenever we get to the question at the end, and we always say, we haven't seen this question before.
Right.
But then on the intro, we're saying we've seen it and we know what it is and it's a great question. It's because we do the intro for these after the podcast.
Yes.
So if you didn't know that, it wouldn't make sense because they're like, they told me what the question is. And then we get to the question and they're like,
fresh.
We've never seen it. I don't understand. So we've never made that clarification. Probably will never make it again, but
For inquiring minds.
Just inquiring minds want to know. Another quick announcement. We won't keep making this announcement either, but we're just now starting something brand new, which is we're recording these live on YouTube as video. So right now, up to this point, we would put the Naked Marriage Podcast on YouTube just as the audio file. Mm-hmm. But now we're inviting you into the studio with us. And so most folks listen to this on iTunes or Spotify or Stitcher or Google Play, wherever you listen. Thank you for listening, but you can also go over to YouTube, look up the Marriage Today channel, or just search for the Naked Marriage Podcast, and you can start watching these. And we would love to, invite you to watch with us. Before we dive into today's episode, I'm going to read a review. This one happens to be from iTunes. We love reading all your reviews. Thank you guys so much. They really kind of keep us going. This one is 5 stars. It's entitled Speaking to Me, and it's from BGWKS. And she says, I stumbled across this podcast this week after having a heart-to-heart with my husband. We are great, but had slowly drifted from a married couple to friends and forgot to nurture our marriage. 14 years and 2 children and a lack of communication is what hurt us. I've been reading books and listening, and this podcast is amazing. It feels like you're speaking directly to me. Thank you.
That's so awesome. Wow.
And thank
Very
you
sweet.
and for sharing that. And I think that, we can all get there. Right? Just going through life. It's not that any crisis necessarily has happened, but we just start drifting apart because we're in the grind of raising kids and paying bills and all that, and being intentional about building your marriage. And that can be as simple as, listening to the Naked Marriage Podcast and then talking about it.
That's right.
Can help get you moving in the right direction. So
true. Well, let's dive into today's episode. I'm so excited about this one because this is some of the best modern marriage advice that we've ever heard, because so many times our phones get a bad rap, and we will be the first to say, we've got to be aware of technology not really overtaking our time, because we have to give a significant time investment to have a great marriage. And so many times, technology can be a big drain of our time. And so we can kind of get distracted. But we truly believe that you can actually use your phone, in particular, your smartphone, to enhance your marriage, to make it better.
that's right. That's the advice for today, is use your phone to build your marriage, not to be a distraction from your marriage. Because these little powerful supercomputers, they can be amazing marriage building tools, or they can be really toxic, marriage distractions. And so the difference is how you're using it. If it's always just an escape, if you're sitting in the same room but you're always in different worlds because you're scrolling through different things and you're not engaging with each other ever, that's clearly a kind of a dangerous thing. But if you're going to use your phone as a way to connect, that's good. So here's just a few practical ways to use technology to your advantage. Well, number one, pat yourself on the back. You're doing it right now.
You are.
You are listening to the Naked Marriage Podcast, which is all designed to help you build a stronger marriage and a stronger faith. And so congrats to you for just putting this message in your ears or watching this on YouTube, because now we're actually filming these in studio, and you can, wherever you're listening right now, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, you can go over to YouTube, look up the same episode and watch us, watch us in the studio doing it, which has been a lot of fun. So doing things like that, reading ebooks, audiobooks, podcasts, but in particular, how you communicate with your spouse. And I'm going to give you like one of the best, simplest pieces of marriage advice related to your phone. Try to answer your phone every single time your spouse calls.
Yes.
Like no matter what's going on, just answer it. Even if you have to say, "Hey, sweetie, I'm tied up with something right now. Are you okay? Can I call you later?" Yeah. It lets them know like the place of priority they have in your heart, in your schedule. So don't ghost them. Don't end the call. Don't just answer. Be available to each other as much as possible.
Yes. No, that is huge. And it just sends the message that you are the highest priority. Whatever I'm doing, and I understand, there's certain jobs, there's certain situations where, like Dave said, you can't have a lengthy conversation, but just even it sending, on a lot of the iPhones, you can actually send a text that says, sorry, I can't talk right now. And then you could add love you or call you in a minute or whatever it is. It just shows that you care, that you're thoughtful. And I would even say too, we talk a lot about warning lights kind of on your marriage. If you constantly are ghosting them and not wanting to take their call, but yet you're willing to answer everybody else's call, huge red flag, huge warning light. And so I would really just kind of ask yourself why, first of all, and then stop it. Answer your phone.
Yeah, just answer. Guys, this is easy. Every little way that you can show your spouse, you're the most important person in my life.
Yeah.
You're more important than everything else I got going on. And the more you can send that message through your words, through your actions, through simple things, those simple things matter, like picking up your phone, being available, checking in throughout the day.
Right.
It really, really matters. Years ago, I had a job and one of my coworkers, she said, you and Ashley, you talk throughout the day on the phone.
Yeah.
She's like, that seems weird. I don't know, most couples, they don't talk all day and they're going to see each other that night. So that's weird. Why would you talk during the day? And I said, well, I've seen that most marriages, what people consider normal, and I want to be weird. Yeah. Because if normal means disconnected and not, growing in friendship and passionately in love and sharing details of your life with each other, then I want to be weird if weird means that we're always available for each other and that we're really staying connected. And she was like a young newlywed at the time, this person who I greatly admire, by the way, and they've grown in their marriage. And I think that they've kind of taken on some of those so-called weird habits and now have a great marriage and family where they're super connected to one another.
Yeah.
So let me challenge you to be weird. You might be the only one in your office that is, slipping away and doing quick calls to your spouse through the day, texting each other, just staying engaged and connected. But be that guy, be that girl, be the one who is setting the tone and making the other people around you scratch their head and saying, well, maybe I should talk to my spouse more, right? So it's worth the effort. And we don't do these things, by the way, just to make an impression on the people around us. We do this to build our marriage. But one of the side effects is that maybe you'll set a positive example that's going to help someone else's marriage too.
We honestly, at the time, this was probably, 6 years ago that I think she talked about that. We didn't know it was weird at the time. We were like, oh, I guess that is something that maybe not everybody does, because I know that my parents, they do this. They talk throughout the day, and Dave's parents do this.
Right. And they've all been married for, over 40 years.
They have been. And mom and dad, if you're listening, stop doing it on speakerphone, okay? Just like the commercials say.
Oh, gosh,
stop
guys.
it, okay?
Yeah.
I have seriously a bone to pick with this. But if you're listening, talk to your spouse. But at Walmart, the people don't need to know.
Yes. Can we just spend the rest of the episode on this the speakerphone thing? I love those insurance commercials with the guy that's teaching
about don't become your parents.
Teaching people not to be their parents. Some of the funniest commercials on TV. I won't say the company because they're not yet a sponsor of the Naked Marriage Podcast.
Love it if you were.
They are brilliant commercials. And one of them is so you're on your speakerphone in public. Is this necessary? Is that a good idea? No. And it's so true. So mom and dad.
Both of our parents do it.
Bill and Mary, we love you.
Yeah.
Keep talking throughout the day, but turn the dang speakerphone off. Talking to your spouse doesn't mean it has to be a group conversation at Walmart.
Let it be private. Then you can be real sexy, you can have your inside jokes. We don't need to know. We don't need to know.
Well, my mom, not to get too far off track, but every call is speakerphone. And she called me one time not long ago. And
this is so funny.
I was frustrated, and not at her, but she just caught me in a moment of real frustration, and I was expressing this frustration, how are you doing? I'm well, I'll tell you, I've been going through, and it was I was kind of venting, not in any way toward her, but just expressing these
having a
real emotions to my mother.
Yeah.
And then after this whole counseling session, I realized I'd been on speakerphone the whole time, and she's in a carload of like her girlfriends. And mom's like, well, actually, I'm here with the girls with my friends. And one of her friends was like, hi, David, how are you? And I'm like, hi. Like, why? Why would you call someone on speaker? Okay, so that's not what this is about. We're not talking.
There's phone etiquette.
Right, phone etiquette.
Yeah.
We'll save that for maybe I don't even know if that fits within the universe of Naked Marriage Podcast. That's just a good life skill.
It is a life skill.
So where were we? Right, using the phone to stay connected.
Enhance our marriage.
Without the speakerphone, right?
Yes. I mean, there's just... I don't understand why that's necessary. So that's neither here nor there. If it means talking to your spouse and you insist on speakerphone, do it. I'm just saying the rest of us are annoyed the whole time. I'm being honest with you. Like, we don't love it. Like, the people, your fellow patrons at your favorite places, like your restaurants, your stores, we're not loving it.
We don't need to be in it.
If it means talking to your spouse and that's the only way you'll do it, do it.
These are good points. These are life-changing principles. We're trying to help the world.
That's right.
Turning one speakerphone off at a time. So answer the phone when your spouse calls. Use your phone to invest in marriage building resources. Listen, guys, there's never been a better time in all of human history to have complete access to all the world's good information in the palm of your hand. I mean, it is unimaginable to generations past that we would have the resources that we have. So there's really never an excuse to like waste any time, because there's always something that you can learn, so much that's free. And again, pat yourselves on the back. You're doing it right now just by intentionally investing some time into listening to a faith-based marriage building podcast that's going to help encourage you with principles that are going to help build those relationships. So do more of this kind of stuff, and if it's not listening to the Naked Marriage podcast or the Naked Marriage audiobook, which is also available in paperback, which is, thank you, by the way, for all of your kind reviews about that resource.
Yes.
We've appreciated that. There's so much out there that you can stay connected to. Go to the site exomarriage.com. We've got a bunch of free resources there. And besides looking for the good stuff, phone building your marriage also means avoiding the bad stuff. Because you have at the palm of your hand, all the world's good stuff. The downside of that is there's never been more distraction. Yeah. Some of the distraction is just like time wasting stuff. Some of it is we spend too much time on social media, and staying connected to people morphs into this weird comparison trap game where we're never content. And then some of it is just downright toxic stuff like pornography, which, the porn use has never been higher. Mm-hmm. And we won't turn this into just another porn episode. We've talked a lot about this. It used to be a real struggle for me. It's a big part of our testimony. I know firsthand just, how devastating it can be to your mind and to your marriage. But if you're using technology to pursue those kinds of things, it's going to have just a toxic, insidious impact in your marriage. And so you've got to be so mindful. One last quick little caveat, and I want to turn it back to Ashley because she's the smart one in the relationship. She really is. And that is, if you want your phone to be a tool to build your marriage, you cannot have any secrets from each other. And what I mean by that in terms of your phone is you can't be afraid for your spouse to pick up your phone at any time and use it. If they need it for some reason, if they need to look up something online, there should be nothing on your phone that you're afraid of your spouse seeing.
Right.
And if you have a password protected phone from your spouse, that's messed up. If you value your personal privacy more than transparency and trust in marriage, then you frankly don't understand what marriage is supposed to be. That's what a naked marriage is living with no secrets. And you've got to be willing to just open up. Like Ashley and I share the same Apple ID on our phones just out of convenience. But one thing it does is like we see each other's text messages, like we're connected into each other's browser history. And it's not because we don't trust each other. It's because we do trust each other and want to be connected into each other's world. And sometimes it helps us actually say, oh, did you see that text from so-and-so? Don't forget you've got that thing tomorrow, and I'll do the same for you.
Right.
And if the thought of doing that in your marriage totally freaks you out, then I just got to ask you why. Yeah. Like, what is it that you're compartmentalizing away from your spouse that you're so afraid of them being part of? Live without secrets.
And it does, phones are meant to connect us, right? But if we have secrets, and we're using our phone just to keep these secrets and to perpetuate these secrets, then we're missing the connection, right? And we're not using it as a tool to help our marriage, but it becomes something that hinders our marriage because, again, like Dave said, privacy becomes more important than the intimacy that we want in our marriage. And we want to be intimate. I mean, the whole entire reason we're doing this podcast is because we want to encourage people just like you to have what we like to refer to as a naked marriage, meaning there's no secrets, there's total vulnerability, there's total transparency, and that builds intimacy. And so this phone, he talked about, I wanted to touch on this, about how we call each other throughout the day. Some jobs don't allow that, but you might be able to text each other throughout the day. And this could be flirty, this could be verses, this could be prayers, this could be funny memes. Dave I've always said this on the podcast, he has an amazing GIF game.
Oh yeah.
And he will sometimes just,
we'll
communicate in GIFs. Like,
pretty strong.
It's hilarious. We also use it, even with our kids who are old enough to understand it. It's funny. Like we have a whole office GIF game going on with our 15-year-old. But it's just sweet that we can have that sense of humor. We always say laughter's like fresh air to your marriage. It's a good way to kind of bring humor into your marriage. Sometimes we love to dream together. One day we want to open like a bed and breakfast. So sometimes Dave will send me these like old historic homes on Zillow and be like, oh, wouldn't this be so cool? Just dreaming together. So there's lots of ways that you can just enhance your relationship and your intimacy. And, I just practically speaking, it will help your relationship because you won't have to just not talk all day and then just dump on each other. And I remember talking to a friend of mine years ago where this was a huge problem in their marriage because her husband just refused at the time to kind of touch and, check in with her throughout the day via text or calls. And so by the end of the day, she at the time had young kids. She would just have everything. She had no adult contact most of the day because she was at home with the kids. And he would come home and he was exhausted. She was exhausted, but she was just dying for human contact and conversation. And so she would just say everything that she really could have probably told him throughout the day and kind of sprinkled in there, but she had it all kind of bottled up and it wore him out, but then it made her feel disrespected because he wouldn't listen. And it really caused major marital issues. And I remember having lunch with her and I was like, listen, why don't you all just text throughout the day or give each other a call? It would just go so far in your relationship. And we have since moved. I don't know if they do that, but I really hope and pray they do because it's a very simple step. A simple act, you all. It could be a couple minutes per phone call or take 1 minute to do that text, but it will just save you from feeling annoyed with each other at the end of the day because it's understandable that a stay-at-home mom would be exhausted. It's understandable that two working people come home and their minds are reeling. Like we all need to have reprieve, but if you've been connecting throughout the day, you don't just become like the dump, when you come home with every frustration or concern or, to the point where like the bad stuff is kind of, it's become too much that you don't even remember the funny gift that you wanted to share with your spouse. I mean, that's what happens. So go ahead and have that little kind of new habit of touching base throughout the day.
Yeah, it really does make and like you said, it takes a lot of pressure off. At the end of the day, when you're both, and I think so many couples fall into that dynamic where they don't communicate all day. And then maybe one spouse has so much they want to communicate at the end of the day, it wears the other spouse out. Yeah. And so then there's no communication or there's just frustrated communication. But when you take it a little bit at a time throughout the day, it makes the time together at the end so much more meaningful because you don't have to spend all your time just exchanging facts at the end. Yeah. You can really connect on a deeper level because you're all caught up on the facts. You know who has to, pick up something at the pharmacy and who has to do this and that. You've already kind of touched base on all that and you can really connect on the deeper stuff.
Right. And, we've said on here many times on this podcast, don't give your best to everybody else, to all your colleagues, to the different phone calls you have throughout the day, and then come home and just give your spouse your leftovers. You want to give your spouse your best. And, after you've worked all day and whatever you've been doing, you've been running around, you've been doing everything, you've been talking to people all day, it's understandable that you're tired. So, it's understandable that you maybe need a moment when you get home. But if you have given some of your best to your spouse throughout the day, they get it. And it's not offensive to them that you're not, real chatty when you come home. I know for Dave, especially I stayed home with our boys in the kind of early years of having kids. And I remember that feeling of just dying to actually talk to him in person. But we had connected so much throughout the day that I didn't have this desperation. And Dave I just knew that if he had like 30 minutes to just gather and kind of
Because at the end of the day,
recalibrate.
I had to switch gears, especially in those early years. It took me a while to switch from kind of like work mode to home mode.
Oh yeah.
And I was processing, a lot. And I think a lot of people, especially guys, tend to be wired up this way where it's like we have to process in different ways. Like, and I hear a lot of wives say, oh, my husband, like, he's been gone all day. And then he gets home and he wants to be alone for 20 more minutes. And that's like really offensive to me because I've been waiting to see him. And so like what I challenge guys to do and kind of like, even if it's on that drive home, even if you don't have a long commute, use that drive home to be the time that you kind of go through the decompress, that you do whatever to get your headspace in the right way so that when you walk in those doors, you can be fully present with your wife and your kids and let them know that I am so excited to see you. I've been waiting for this moment all day, and to not let the first thing you do when you get home to be like pushing them all away because you need more time, because they need you in that moment. And so you've got to do whatever you need to do to walk in undistracted. Mm-hmm. And one thing that helped me early on is I'd use the ride home to make final phone calls for the day. Mm-hmm. And very often I'd walk in the house and I'd still be on a phone call, and I'd walk in, the kids would want to play with me and Ashley would want to see me. And I'd be kind of shushing everybody. No, daddy's still on the phone. Daddy's still on the phone. And I realized that I was missing out on that beautiful sacred moment of being able to walk in fully engaged. And so I just kind of made a policy that I'm never going to walk in the house on the phone. Yeah. And if I'm on a call, I'm going to wrap it up. And just say, hey, I'm home. I'm going to have to jump off here.
Even if you're in the driveway. Like sometimes he would sit in the driveway to wrap up that phone call, and that's okay. And then once you're home, you're home.
Yeah, once you're home, you're home. And so again, guys, these phones can be powerful tools to stay connected, or they can be big distractions. We have got to be, one of the biggest challenges in our time is being so intentional about making sure we're using these devices the right way and not the wrong way. And staying engaged with each other in conversation is a great way to stay accountable, to see each other's blind spots, and if you're using it the right way or the wrong way. Well, it is time for my favorite part of the episode.
Yes.
Q&A.
That's right. And
we appreciate you guys sending in these questions. You can write us on social media, but the ones we answer on air are the ones that get sent at nakedmarriagepodcast.com. I'll read this one, and my love, you can dive in. By the way, we don't see these ahead of time, so I'm always excited to see what they are, because we just kind of answer them in real time. It says, I've been married for almost 11 years, and in the beginning, I was a horrible husband. Yet my wife stayed, and we've been working on our marriage. Last year, we had a miscarriage. She is now dealing with a lot of anxiety and depression. But I feel like no matter how I deal with her anxiety and depression, there's no solution to the anger that follows. Any thoughts of guidance and wisdom would be wonderful.
Oh, goodness.
And that's heavy. And thank you for writing that.
Absolutely. And I'm just so sorry for your loss. I mean, going through a miscarriage, it's devastating, and there's so much hope with a pregnancy, and your heart's just swelling during the pregnancy. And then to experience that loss, it is so hard on both spouses. And it is hard on the marriage too, because you've gone through a loss together, and everybody processes that differently. And it sounds like your wife is having that anxiety and depression. And though I have not had a miscarriage, I have walked through anxiety and depression. And I know that there are just so many different emotions that kind of come with that. And I think with her, what she's tended to go to is anger. And that anger is not directed towards you as her husband. Her anger is at the loss of that child. And anger is a part of the grief process. I mean, it's literally one of the steps in processing grief. And so I think as her husband, I know you want to help her. I know you're like, I want to fix it. That's a very normal way to feel. But the best thing you can do is to hold her and to level with her and say, you know what? I'm angry too. I'm angry too. I wanted that child too. And I don't even pretend to understand why we lost that child. We won't understand till we get to ask the Lord himself one day. But in the midst of this, I just want you to know I'm in the corner with you, and I want to hold you, and I'm not leaving your side. I'm not mad at you. And I know you're not mad at me, but I just am here for you. And when I was walking through anxiety and depression many years ago, the best thing Dave could do for me was to listen, and was to tell me that I wasn't crazy, because I would often say, I know I'm crazy, or I'm damaged, or I'm never going to get through this. And him just reassuring me that we were going to get through this, that I wasn't damaged, that God was doing a work in me, and that I wouldn't feel this way forever, and that we would heal from this. That just spoke volumes. But there were many nights when I would wake him up where he would literally not even say a word, but he would just hold me while I cried. And I think with your wife being angry, just listening to her process that anger is huge. I also think kind of the next step, and again, the grieving process takes, like, you never know how long it's going to take, not rushing that's huge. Not rushing her healing is huge. But I also think with the lingering anxiety and depression, encouraging her to have a counselor, to find a Christian counselor she can talk to is major. And, we actually have an organization. I know right now a lot of people can't meet in person. There's an organization called Faithful Counseling that we recommend here on the podcast. And you can actually, tell her she can find a counselor, a Christian counselor that will, Skype with her, talk to her on the phone, and it's private and it's confidential, and she can process this, because this is something that she needs that extra help. This is professional help. And what is that website, sweetie, that she can go to?
That website is getfaithful.com/nakedmarriage. Getfaithful.com/nakedmarriage. It's a wonderful online Christian counseling option that could help her individually as she's processing the anxiety and depression. And it would also be good for you to meet individually with a counselor, to just talk through how you could best help. So in addition to that individual counseling, and by the way, Ashley and I have both through the years benefited from individual Christian counseling.
Absolutely.
And I just think that there's such wisdom in that, really in every season of life.
Yeah.
So we're excited about, our partners there at Faithful Counseling, and honored that they're partners here with this podcast. In addition to that, we offer coaching at Marriage Today, and our coaches are just, really gifted encouragers who can help guide you in your marriage and really talk to you together. It's not so much the individual approach, but it's kind of guiding you together as a couple. Mm-hmm. And that's also available by phone or by Skype. So you don't have to leave your home. You can talk to our coaches right from your computer. Their website is marriagetoday.com/coaches. Mm-hmm. And the website that'll pull up will have a header that says Operation Hope. And that's really what they do. They help you bring more hope to your marriage. And so check out those resources. Right. We try to put as many resources in your hands with this podcast. The podcast itself is a resource, but very often the best thing we can do is point you to that next step, whether it's counseling, whether it's coaching. We have a lot of other resources available, many of them free at xomarriage.com. And we'd love for you to check that out as well. So thank you so much for your question. And we're going to pray and just believe that God's going to continue to bring healing to that relationship as you continue to just love and serve each other. Sweetie, I think you have another resource you want to share before we wrap up.
I do. I have an author friend of mine who has an amazing resource that I think would be a gift that you could give your wife to help her process this grief and even her anger. And it's a devotional that is specific to miscarriage, and it's called Loved Baby, 31 Devotions Helping You Grieve and Cherish Your Child After Pregnancy Loss. It's by Sarah Philpott. We'll put that in the show notes. We'll be sure to do that. But I think that would be huge, because I know that you feel inadequate right now because you want to help so bad, and you yourself are grieving. And I just want to, own the fact of that too. I know you're grieving and you're processing, and then you're also trying to help your wife. And so God bless you for that. I think it's wonderful that you were so honest and wrote this question, but I do think it'd be great if we could just pray for them, sweetie, before we leave. We don't always do that, but Let's say a prayer for this couple, and we'll extend the prayer, of course, to all of those,
who've experienced the pain of miscarriage. It's an invisible wound that so many are carrying.
Many.
And then also the many who are experiencing anxiety and depression, and just worldwide right now, those numbers are skyrocketing just because there's so much pain and uncertainty that's just happening in our world, and now more than ever we need the peace that only the Lord can bring. So,
that's right.
So let me say a prayer for us, and feel free to just receive this prayer as a blessing wherever you are. If you're driving in a car, please don't close your eyes. I don't want you to meet Jesus today as a result of this prayer, but just receive it as a blessing. Father, I lift up first this couple who wrote in this question, that you'd bring healing to their wounded hearts over the loss of this child that we know is now safely in your arms, God, but their hearts are still heavy. And I just pray that you would comfort them and help them comfort each other. I pray for this wife and mother, that you'd bring healing to her heart and to her mind as she wrestles with this anxiety and depression, something I know, Lord, that you want to bring peace to as only you can. I lift up all those who are dealing with anxiety and depression, God, and many, many are. Our world is so troubled right now. And I just pray, God, that you would let your will and your presence be felt all throughout this world, because Jesus, you're the only one who can bring real healing. It's not going to come through politicians. It's not going to come through anybody but you. And I just pray, God, that you'd bring your kingdom, and that is a kingdom of peace. And I just thank you for that. For those who are hurting, let them find hope in you. For those that don't know you yet in a personal way, I just pray, Jesus, that they would reach out to you in faith and they would begin that journey that changes everything, Lord, because knowing and loving you is really the point of life. And until we discover that, we're always going to be directionless. And I pray for those who don't know you, God, that they would open up their hearts to you, because you've done all the work and you're the one pursuing them, and just let them by faith surrender to your leading in their life and find the hope that you want to give. So Lord, we thank you for your love and your grace, and we pray your blessing on every marriage, all those who are listening, and we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Bye, guys.